We will never turn our back on a single Scot.
We've got to wrestle with those challenges.
This is the same nonsense we have heard time and time again.
This is our country. Let's fix it together.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Planet Holyrood. I'm Paul Hutcheon, political editor of the Daily Record. I'm joined this week by Hannah Rodger, who's the political editor of the Sunday Mail, Douglas Dickie of the Scottish Daily Express, and Mark Smith, who's the head of news at the Daily Record. So, a bit of an SNP special this week. Let's start with the announcement by the Deputy First Minister Kate Forbes that she's going to be standing down at the next Holyrood election. She said that she didn't want to miss any more of the early years of her young family. Hannah, what do you think? Take it at face value, or is there more to it?
I think that, my gut tells me that there's probably more to it because, Kate Forbes is somebody who's seen as, a strong contender for SNP sort of leadership. She's also one of those people who's on the sort of right of the party. She's more conservative. She's more into sort of the economy, business. And I think that the party, like the SNP, I think needs people like that to provide a bit of a balance. And with her going, I feel like it kind of shifts the party in a different direction. But also, I think the fact that, fair enough, she does have a young child. It is hard to balance childcare and I guess being a mum with such a high profile job. But you would think if she just wanted to have more time with her child, she would say, okay, I'm going to leave government, but, I'm happy to still be a backbench MSP. So I find it quite strange that she's basically saying goodbye to her political career at this point, given that, she has been so sort of prominent within the SNP.
I mean, she has hinted in the past about the difficulties in juggling representing a Highlands constituency, working in Edinburgh and having to raise her child. And so that hasn't really been a massive surprise. But, looking at it through a political lens, Doug, if folk in the SNP felt like Indy F2 was just around the corner, if it was a couple of years away, that independence was a viable prospect, would someone like Kate Forbes really be standing down?
Well, not just Kate Forbes. If it was just Kate Forbes, then I think you might have said maybe there is nothing more to it than, a mother wanting to spend more time with her children after her amazing Indian epiphany or whatever it was. But but I think the fact there's, what was it now? What we had, 24, 25 SNP, MSPs?
I mean, it's not so much an exodus as a stampede.
Yeah, so it doesn't look like a party that's expecting success. I mean, John Swinney's pretty much ended their Indy Ref hopes with his Indy Ref plan. John Curtis has been saying it, that they're not going to win a majority. It would be unbelievable.
He was going to retire as well.
Yeah,
he was ready to walk,
he was,
and then
he was ready to go.
He's probably jealous of all his colleagues.
I mean, she's John Swinney's deputy. She was seen as quite close to Swinney, I thought. They're quite close politically. And yet she's kind of standing down. She's someone who had ambitions of leading the party.
But do you know what, it's weird though, because she, if she did stay on to the next term, she would have quite a strong chance of becoming the next First Minister at some point.
Yeah. Absolutely. One thing I found strange about her going, I'm actually for all, she's got this kind of reputation, Kate Forbes, as, a really shrewd political operator and someone who's, seen as a bright, shining young thing. But I've actually struggled to think of any kind of lasting.
Well, something. I think that's a really good point. So if you look over her time as an MSP, her best moments would probably be stepping in for Derek Mackay to deliver the budget at the last minute. That was a really difficult thing to do. The way she demolished Hamza Yusuf in that first debate. But I think she's been in government for about 7 years. Smitty, can you think, what would her number one achievement be in terms of policy or delivering something in that time in government? Because I can't think of anything.
there's no doubt she did well when she came in, and she was seen as the bright young thing and all that. And standing in at the last minute for Derek Mackay was kind of miraculous political work. I think she did really well to garner so much support, in the SNP, considering that her political position is possibly to the right of the mainstream of where the SNP is, but she still managed to gather a lot of support among SNP members. I think that is probably her greatest achievement. In government, I really don't think she's set the heather on fire. And like a lot of SNP ministers...
That's what I was going to say, like, who has?
Exactly. I don't think she's unusual in that regard. But I think there are two reasons why she's decided to go. One is Stephen and the other is Flynn, right? She knows there's a massive battle for the soul of the SNP coming up when Swinney stands down, and that, who knows when that'll happen? Maybe sooner rather than later, who knows? Because his indie strategy is non-existent and is self-defeating. So there is going to be a big battle for the heart and soul of the SNP. Stephen Flynn is clearly voraciously keen on being the man who leads the SNP. I just think that Kate just felt that she didn't fancy that fight. And she thought, you know what, if I'm not going to be the next leader, what's the point in, struggling on as a minister in a government which is sort of a wee bit rudderless and a wee bit aimless without Indy as its key driving force. And she's seeing other people like Fergus Ewing depart the party, and she's maybe thinking that her particular pro-business view of the world is maybe not going to be reflected very widely in government. So I think all of that cobbled together has made her appreciate her family more.
I think that looking ahead to the next SNP leadership contest, whenever that is, Stephen Flynn becomes an MSP. I think he'll clearly be a contender, despite the fact that he initially botched his move to Holyrood through that announcement about how he was going to get into the Parliament.
In the P&J.
Indeed, yeah, we won't talk about that. But I think if you speak to people close to John Swinney, the person that they want to be the next SNP leader is Mary McCallen. So I think that right now, if there was going to be a contest, it would be McCallen versus Flynn.
Yeah, I noticed you tweeting that. What's Mary McCallen done that makes you think she might be the next leader of the SNP?
Well, that's the point. It's like, I don't understand it, sorry, but...
Robocop.
I think the thing is, so wait.
But also, she's came from nowhere.
Aye.
Not nowhere, but she's very kind of new compared to quite a few. Obviously, a lot of the kind of older guard are leaving, but I think somebody who's relatively newbie-ish in politics. I mean, before she became an MSP, was she not did she not work for Nicola Sturgeon or something?
No, I think her first ever job was working the front desk at SNP HQ. So she's quite like Hamza in that regard, that her whole life, I think, has been the SNP.
Yeah, and I have a particular problem with that. I don't think that we should have career politicians.
She's the very definition of a career politician.
Yeah.
The absolute definition of her.
Yeah.
And, thinking ahead, if we're talking about a leadership election, at some point, if she did win and she became the First Minister, I do not want a First Minister who's literally never had a proper job other than working for a political party, for a politician, and then being a politician. No, it's unacceptable. I actually think there should be a rule that you must have, X number of years working outside politics before you can even stand.
Would both of them not fall into that category, Flynn and McCallen? I'm trying to think what his
I don't know
backstory
to be
is.
honest, that much about Stephen Flynn's. Did he not do some stuff to do with social work or something?
I think
I'm not sure.
Two,
sorry, Stephen, if you're
you
listening.
really, I really should know what he done. He's like my brother-in-law's best friend, but they're such contrasting characters as well. Mary McCallen and Stephen Flynn. Stephen's a real kind of in your face, very, very kind of bold, brash, whereas Mary McCallen's quite understated and maybe a bit more polished. I think
she's too polished though.
Yeah,
it is like the
absolutely.
vocal
But
politician.
I think Stephen's maybe too much of a bruiser.
Someone high up on that described Flynn to me as young Salmond. Now, that was in a political context, political approach, nothing else. But I can see what they mean by that.
Salmond.
He's got a certain aggressive.
I think there's a
approach
feeling.
to politics.
I think there's a feeling amongst the fringe that Stephen Flynn would be more amenable to some of the more outlandish independence tactics. Maybe not quite UDI, but de facto referendums and things like that.
I think. Do you not think
take it
though?
to the Court of Human Rights or whatever? They
I
want
think
to
Mary
do.
McCallen would be. You get the impression she's somebody that'd be happy to mosey along as a devolutionist party and continue to take her paycheck. And you get the impression with some of these politicians that's their main motive, I think. Whereas with Flynn, I think he's a true believer. I think. I mean, he was involved obviously in the council in Aberdeen. He's very. I think he led the council up there. He's a guy that's lived his life to try and promote the cause of independence very strongly. And I don't think he's an HQ guy either. I think he's formed his own sort of.
Well, the way he took out Ian Blackford showed that he's
And yet
he knows what he's doing.
And yet Blackford's coming back.
Oh well, there was a story today that with Kate Forbes standing down, her successor may be Ian Blackford, who had already decided not to stand for Holyrood. So
Yeah.
how about the prospect of Blackford and Flynn in the same parliament again?
That would be really good for us.
It would be fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would be
Ian,
great.
if you're listening, please do it. That would be great.
Yeah.
We should
Give us
definitely
some copy.
give it a go.
Do you not think though, right? The SNP, we have seen them run out of road, as you've both said on the independence thing. Do you think that they need somebody like Stephen Flynn who's just going to go Raj?
It would be nice if he came in and did something dramatic.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like as a movement and a party, they need some sort of impetus to get them going again, get them up and get the blood flowing.
Yeah.
Because I think without that, like all nationalisms, I suppose it needs a sort of certain irrationality about it. I think he would be a leader that would actually motivate the base.
Yeah.
And I think that would
Would he-
help invigorate the movement.
Would he win support to the cause though out with the base?
It's like everything else. I mean, Salmond was hugely aggressive as a young politician. I mean, he was chucked out of Parliament more times than Ron Brown, I think. I mean, Salmond was a guy who was happy to look anti-establishment, look rebellious. And
We also knew that got him headlines though.
Exactly. I think Flynn might see that as a similar a way forward.
But it wasn't until he was part of the establishment, till Alex Salmond was, in the bricks, so to speak, that he actually made inroads in terms of, building.
But he still got a majority, which was, I mean, the whole system was designed to avoid the majority. He managed through force of will and just political nous to get that majority, and then it became a sort of a bit of a game with David Cameron about whether we get a referendum. But I mean, he did that through charisma, political nous, all the rest of it. I'm not making any great claims for Salmond's political position on things, but he was a charismatic figure, and I just think that Flynn, I don't think he is Salmond. I don't think he's a young Salmond or an old Salmond. But he does have a certain amount of that rebellious spirit.
Young Salmond or an old Salmond.
I think I said
I'm sorry for throwing that phrase into the podcast.
I'm reminded of the film Young Churchill, but I don't think that's really what they're getting at.
Yeah.
I said on here a few weeks ago that I didn't think John Swinney was a leader, and you guys kind of
definitely is.
said I was wrong. But anyway, the point I was making is, for me, John Swinney's like a boss, right? Which isn't a bad thing, right? But a boss and a leader,
Technocratic leader, yes.
a boss and a leader are two different things.
So wait, what do you
need
mean
a
a
boss
boss?
to kind of direct people, to put people in the right places, to delegate. You need a boss to run things. A
So
leader,
you think he's like a manager?
yeah,
Rather than like someone who
rather than
inspires people.
someone who inspires
Right,
people.
okay.
Exactly. The way that, lover or loather, Nicola Sturgeon, had a massive amount of devotion within the SNP. Salmond, again, very divisive figure. But there was people willing to form him off a cliff, a metaphorical cliff. The SNP, as a part of government, needs a boss. But as a movement, as an independence movement, as a nationalist movement, it needs a leader.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not convinced Stephen Flynn would be a very good manager, but I think he'd be a better leader than a Mary McCallen or a John Swinney.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. Yeah.
Okay, so moving from one SNP big beast to another, Nicola Sturgeon, as you just referred to there, Dougie, she's got her memoirs out. I think it's at the 14th of August. I think it's next week.
Is it the 14th?
There or thereabouts. We're expecting a serialisation over the weekend as well.
Who's doing that?
It's rumoured to be the Times newspaper. So, I mean, all memoirs are, to an extent, self-serving, and they portray the person who's writing the book in the best possible light. And Sturgeon was Scotland's longest-serving First Minister. She took us through COVID. She won all those elections. She had the big falling out with Alex Salmond. And there's branch form, which I would imagine she won't be able to touch on at any great length.
Even if she could, she wouldn't.
No. I mean, what are you expecting?
Don't ask me. Good no idea. You know?
I mean, these books tend to be pretty tedious, don't
What
they?
I'd like to know is where they went in the camper van. That's the only thing I would like to know.
I'm reminded of the Simpsons episode.
Peter Murrow's mum's house.
Yeah.
Well, you know, if they went on like any little day trips to Millport or something. I don't know.
I'm hoping for, some juicier lines than that. I mean, I guess what I would like is that there's this narrative developing amongst supporters of Alex Salmond that he was harshly treated, he's the victim of a conspiracy, that a bunch of women got together to do him down. Nicola Sturgeon clearly does not believe that, and I just wonder if she's going to take aim at Salmond in this.
I think she's probably going to address Salmond, if we think of the main things that have happened in Nicola Sturgeon's sort of time, particularly as First Minister, it's been this fallout with Salmond and latterly Operation Branch Form. She can't talk about Branch Form. So the majority, like the biggest thing is, her relationship with Salmond and that whole relationship breakdown. So I imagine she is going to address it. And
I feel like she's pulled her punches on Salmond. Obviously, he died, and you have to be respectful. But
you don't really have to be respectful.
Well, I mean, okay, you don't have to be, but she chose to be, and maybe she was just keeping her powder dry for her book. Mm-hmm. But I sense that she's got a lot to say about Salmond.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing with Salmond is, and the criticism that's been made about Sturgeon and all of our allies is it really the case you didn't know anything about Alex Salmond's alleged behaviour towards women? It was really a big shock to you when it came out in the trial?
I mean, if it was a shock to her, she must have been looking the other way very, very strongly, because it wasn't a shock to anyone else who worked in that parliament or was around Scottish politics.
Well, exactly.
I think the thing about this book is, I mean, they say all political careers end in failure, don't they? But hers ended in absolutely catastrophic, epic failure over independence, despite the vast political resources and support that she inherited from Salmond. She blew it. So that was an epic failure, in terms of the attainment gap that she said, judge me on that. Mm-hmm. Epic failure. The health service, epic failure. And I would argue that her most laughable failure was to say whether Isla Bryson was a man or a woman. I mean, it made her a laughingstock because she could not answer that basic question. So, this book to me is going to be a justification for all of her actions and all of these things. But it won't address the key issue of her failure on all of these things. And it will probably say, oh, these weren't actually failures. I was right all along. I think the whole book's going to be one big rant about how great she was and everyone else was rubbish.
She's never been someone who apologises.
No,
and you're right. You're right. In terms of independent strategy, she took her party up this cul-de-sac with promises of a second referendum and bogus dates and milestones that didn't matter. That didn't amount to anything in the end. Yeah. And we spoke about Kate Forbes earlier about what's her main achievement in government. I mean, Sturgeon was FM for 9 years. I mean, there's a couple of things I would give her in terms of policy, but you can fundamentally transform and change a country in nearly a decade in charge. And you look at what her legacy is, and it's
badly tarnished. It's badly tarnished, and I'll enjoy reading this book as we all will. I'll be putting lots of stories from it on the front page of the Record. I'm absolutely sure of it. But
not of the Times is serialising it because they'll get there first.
I might not get a scoop on it, but for sure. But
ignore that.
I'll maybe give it a wee ring and ask if we could have it first.
Yeah.
I think that'd be fair because we are the Daily Record, and no other paper.
That's a fair point.
Except the Sunday Mail.
It's Sunday Mail, Sunday Mail.
Express doesn't count.
I think the Express should definitely get an advance. I think we'd be reading it with more interest.
I'm sure you'll be treated as a priority, Dougie. Yeah.
Anyone? I mean, the whole thing. I was going to say, the whole thing reminds me of the Simpsons episode where Bart goes to Camp Krusty and he describes Krusty the Clown's autobiography as self-serving with many glaring omissions. And I think this is going to be something very, very similar. I think she should address the Salmond stuff. She should be addressing this stuff. But as Smitty said, it's just going to be 500 pages of why I was right and you're wrong.
I don't know if it is going to be that.
An attempt to
think you guys are being a bit harsh.
salvage her reputation, you know.
I mean, her final speech, your resignation press conference, and the speech she gave was quite reflective in the sense that she said that she felt it should become an obstacle to the country becoming united, that she was like a lightning rod for division.
Yeah.
So she might go into a bit of that as well.
Well, yeah, but she made that speech, and then about 3 weeks later, there was a police tent erected outside of her house. So, you know.
She says that was a pure coincidence.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm just saying there's always different sides to everything and different shades.
I think we can expect an updated version once branch form concludes, perhaps.
Yeah, maybe.
With additional chapters added in.
Yeah, I'm not expecting
just in the shops for Christmas.
Yeah.
I just, you know, I think
that's probably the one subject that people genuinely want to hear.
Well, that's what I was going to say. You know, we're all hoping for some juicy gossip. Obviously, she'll probably mention her marriage and things like that, but not going to go into a lot of detail about, you know, the stuff that we really want to know. But Nicola Sturgeon, to me, is not. I can't imagine her writing some tell-all book filled with gossip.
What's the point then?
Well,
you know,
I'm just saying,
you're right.
We all want that, but I can't. That's not her style, you know. And especially if, you know, her dreams of becoming, you know, a UN representative or whatever, that's all gone. So she's clearly focused now on being in the literary world. If she wants to be taken seriously, I just can't imagine her writing something that's all, you know, oh, Joanna Cherry said this and Alex Salmond did that. I
guarantee there'll be at least one review that says this raises more questions than it's answered.
Yeah.
Absolute guarantee it.
Yeah. And so, people are going to pour over it, you know, line by line, as if it's, you know, a witness statement of some kind. It's a book.
Maybe it was.
We'll all get a fright if it's like the Alan Clark Diaries.
That would be amazing.
And the revelations about, you know, intergenerational romps in a palace and stuff like that. You know, we'll get a shock if that happens.
Yes, we will get a shock,
but it's not going to.
Well, that's what I mean. I just can't see it.
Just in case our lawyers are listening, that's not.
No, that's definitely not in it.
No.
So it's in one sense, it's the battle of the memoirs. I was at the Joanna Cherry event at the Fringe a couple of days ago, and she said that she's working on her memoir. I think it'll be a very different book. She was obviously a close ally of Alex Salmond, thinks that he was the victim of a conspiracy. She really does not like Nicola Sturgeon, highly critical of the party's strategy on independence. Hannah, I don't sense that...
Speaking of somebody else she doesn't really doesn't like.
You and Joanna Cherry are not known as being great friends.
No.
What do you think about the fact that she's going to be writing a memoir, and might you feature in it?
If I feature in this memoir, no, basically that cannot happen. Please don't plant the idea in our heads. No. What do I think of the fact she's writing a memoir? I mean, if anyone knows Joanna Cherry, it's unsurprising because she loves to, you know, make everything about herself. She loves to attract attention. She loves to be spoken about, you know. So I'm not surprised. I think they're, unlike Nicola Sturgeon's book, I think that this book, if it ever sees the light of day, will contain, you know, lots of claims and juicy tidbits of information. But the value in it, I'm not entirely sure.
Smitty, what do you think about Joanna Cherry?
I think the sidelining of Joanna Cherry, particularly by the Westminster group at the SNP, was a shameful episode in the SNP's history. I think for a woman who's on the left, clearly, who has got a lot to say for herself, to be sidelined in that way, I think it's just a terrible look for the SNP. And I think generally speaking, voters warm to people who are quite outspoken and are willing to, you know, to break the rules now and again. Joanna Cherry was someone who had strong views on the trans issue and other issues. For her to be sidelined in the way she was by the SNP was an utter disgrace. And I look forward to her book because I think her book will be more revealing than Sturgeon's book. I think her book will make more sensible points about material reality and things like that.
Sounds like you're the ghostwriter.
Yeah.
Well, I'm available, Nobody's been down in 5, obviously. I hope so. I've never met Joanna Cherry. I don't know, but all I've seen is her stuff on the telly and on Twitter. But I think for a woman like that to be totally silenced, and she was really badly treated by her colleagues, in terms of just the personal treatment, ignored in the canteen, sidelined for meetings. It was petty and it was unfair. And it says a lot about where the SNP was in terms of treating women who have got something to say for themselves. I look forward to a book.
It kind of symbolises the sort of disintegration of the SNP. I mean, under Salmond, they were so united. Now, Swinney's going to have to talk about what's in Sturgeon's book, maybe about him. She might criticise his independent strategy. Cherry's following up with her book as well. It's just... I mean, they're all talking about each other. They're all backbiting. And it's
the great irony there is that we talk often and regularly and with great gusto about how the SNP have failed in this regard and that regard and how they're divided, etc. And yet on the polls, they keep absolutely bossing it and absolutely cruising to victory in every election.
Well, I'm not sure they're cruising, but I mean, I think their current poll lead is based on people's disappointment with the Labour government rather than any enthusiasm about the SNP.
No doubt, but it's funny how they always seem to just recover when it comes to public support. And I think it's because most people think, or a lot of people in Scotland, there's a big constituency, normally around about 45%, who just think that independence is a better idea for Scotland, and so they vote for the SNP because despite all the fury and the passion around all these debates, most people associate the SNP with independence. And so they continue to do well in the polls. It's like Trump in America. He only needs 40% of people to believe he's rubbish, and he wins elections. And I think as long as the SNP have that constituency to rely on, they're going to be really hard to beat from the other parties. And that's Labour's great challenge in Scotland. And it's going to be hard for them because they've not performed well in a UK level. I think that's fair to say.
It's good to hear an independent supporter admit that it's minority opinion in Scotland.
The truth is, I'm undecided now. I'm on the fence.
Yeah, I think the SNP, the problem with the SNP, we talk about them bossing the polls, and yet the last two big polls we've had, general election, the Hamilton by-election, they've lost.
Yeah, they actually,
when push comes to shove, and Swinney's created a situation where it's not enough to just win this election; they've got to win it with the majority. He's set that out. He's made that.
But we've seen this before as well, and even if they did win with a majority, that doesn't mean anything.
No, I know, but
he's in John Swinney's level.
He's basically setting them up to fail.
One thing he is doing as well, which I find very odd because it failed spectacularly for them at the recent Hamilton by-election, was he's suggesting again, I think last night at his Finn show, that Reform are going to come second in Scotland at the Holyrood election.
Yeah.
It's like, John, have you forgotten what happened?
Yeah.
When you did that last time, Labour absolutely gave you a total spanking.
And it also got Reform way more publicity than they would have if he had just not brought them in.
Clearly decided that that's a strategy he's going to adopt for the next Holyrood election. Talk up Reform. Now, he'll say, I'm only highlighting their presence in Scotland for some greater good. It's a dirty, low-down political stunt to try and talk up Reform to screw Labour. It's not, in my mind, a sensible way to proceed, because by talking up Reform, you're basically facilitating fascism, and he should be thinking twice about adopting that strategy again, I think.
Also, we saw what happened with Reform in that by-election, that disgusting campaign, the online advert. So to be then repeating that tactic of talking up Reform, I'm like, we've seen what they've done already. You can see how dangerous it can be, and especially in the climate that we're in at the moment. I just think you have to be so careful doing things like that. And
so use back in Reform at the next election?
No, we'll be back in the Scottish Conservatives, I assume. Or actually, we'll be backing as ever
still
a tactical vote to get the SNP.
If you want the SNP out, surely the Express should be backing Labour. I mean,
Well, we'll probably back each individual seat. We'll take each individual seat and then make a decision then.
Interesting.
okay, brilliant. Thanks very much to Hannah, to Mark, and to Dougie. You can listen to this episode of Planet Holyrood on Spotify or Apple Music, or watch on the Daily Record YouTube channel. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and TikTok for the latest news and the best bits of the podcast.
We will never turn our back on a single Scot.
We've got to wrestle with those challenges.
This is the same nonsense we have heard time and time again.
This is our country. Let's fix it together.